Good evening, and thank you for joining us for story time this evening. I am Pastor Alex from Trinity Richmond, and this evening's story is going to be a little different than what I've read in the past weeks, where they've been more picture books. Comes from Manna and Mercy by Daniel Erlander. We use many of his resources for our first baptism, for our baptism classes, our first communion classes, and he has some wonderful things that he shares with the church in this regard. So this evening, I'm going to read one chapter from this book. It's a pretty thick book. I'm not going to read the whole book. But one chapter, it talks about manna and mercy for all. In the synagogue at Nazareth, Jesus delivered his inaugural address. He opened the scroll to Isaiah and read about good news to the poor and the acceptable year of Yahweh. This was Jubilee language, which means like a celebration. Land reform language. After reading, he announced that this text was being fulfilled in their hearing. Could it be true? He was proclaiming the good news that God's reign of justice and mercy, of land restored, slaves freed, and debts canceled had begun. Could it be true? The common people were deeply impressed. They were proud of this young teacher who had grown up in their hometown. Their mood changed, however, when Jesus hinted that the restored manna society would include everyone, even Gentiles. And for those of you that don't know, a Gentile is somebody at that point was not a Jewish person of the Jewish faith. Maybe somebody living outside of the faith and even in a different area. The people of Nazareth were furious. These were the heathen, the unworthy, the inferior, the outsiders, the Roman enemies. The townsfolk grabbed Jesus and tried to throw him off a cliff, but Jesus managed to escape. Empowered by God's Spirit and a life of continuous prayer, Jesus went from town to town, teaching and preaching with great authority. The people brought to him many who were sick, and he healed many with diseases and liberated many who were possessed by demons. In all that he said and did, he announced the good news of the reign of God. A new age for humanity had arrived. As you see, he does include some illustrations. There's Jesus preaching in the synagogue or the temple, which is like our sanctuary here. And then Jesus just speaking to the people and healing. Jesus gathered disciples and began to teach them to live as a manna society, a restored Israel, a community of the reign of God. The group included fishermen, tax collectors, outcasts, rebel soldiers, and women. The big deals began to watch, fearful that this joy-filled collection of people might threaten the status quo. Jesus understood the heart of God to be one of compassion, wombishness. He taught about God's compassion in the form of wise sayings, pictures from nature, and parables, stories which entered the ears of the listeners and surprised them with the craziness, the upside-down nature of God's merciful reign. The parables of Jesus pictured God's reign as a wondrous reality. They included a little yeast that leavens the whole loaf, a shepherd who leaves all the sheep to seek one lost sheep. A wounded insider is helped by an unworthy outsider. The humble sinner is justified, not the proud lawkeeper. A father throws a festive banquet for a most unworthy son who has returned home. A woman searches until she finds a lost coin. A mustard seed grows into a treehouse for birds. A poor and hungry beggar lies in the bosom of Abraham. The poor, crippled, blind, and lame are brought in to a great dinner party. The stories rattled the listeners by portraying something so valuable in their midst that it would be too foolish not to drop everything to receive it. What was this precious pearl? The lost sheep, the lost coin, the beckoning home, the tree home for birds. The precious thing was nothing less than a new society, a renewed Israel open to all, a realm of God's extravagant grace, mercy, forgiveness, and compassion, a place where those labeled unworthy or impure are received unconditionally, a world of abundant manna shared by all, a reality worth dropping all other commitments to joyfully receive. Everything Jesus said and did portrayed the precious pearl he called the reign of God. Lepers, prostitutes, tax collectors, sinners, poor people, discarded ones, blind people, debtors, outcasts, children, women, men, elderly people, sick people, Gentiles, Samaritans, Jews, demon-possessed people, outsiders, heretics, Pharisees, lawyers, and even rich people and big deals people were invited. They were touched. They were healed, forgiven, given hope, included, liberated, cleansed, made whole, received, affirmed, held, given dignity, called, honored, loved, embraced, fed, reborn, and freed. In all he taught and in all he did, Jesus proclaimed the reign of God as a place of abundant mercy for all. Jesus came to share God's love for all of us, for every single person, no matter where we live, no matter what color our skin is, no matter who we love, he loves us. And in that message, he proclaimed God's good news that rains down for us today. It is in that good news that we are called to share our love for everyone that we encounter, everyone that is created in the image of God, for all of God's creation. So as we go into the summer, may you encounter everything with new eyes as God has promised to us to restore creation to a new light. So as we go about the rest of our evening and into the summer, can you put your hands together and bow your heads and do a repeat after me prayer? Dear God, thank you for sending Jesus to share the good news in your abundant mercy for all. Amen.